Everybody, here we are again, week number 2, Byline with Ben Dennis. 1 week of news wrapped into one episode. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are here to serve all the top headlines throughout your busy work week into one episode. That's it. Byline is going to be airing every single Friday in order to set up your weekend, and you don't have to rummage through all the headlines throughout the week of what you might have missed. I record on a Thursday. So you might see and hear me pause and read news that's coming in as I record on Thursday. Want to make sure you have the latest. And also along the way, we're going to have one-on-one conversations with the experts, news-adjacent people to really dive in on one specific issue. I've got questions, and I'm sure you do too, and I want to hear them. Quick introduction, I am a career news reporter from rural America, born and raised in Pennsylvania. I now report in Washington, D.C. So with that in mind, before your busy and hopefully relaxing weekend though, let's dive right in. The FBI says that current and former members of the NBA, including a coach in the Hall of Fame, have just been charged. An indictment was unsealed, centered around criminal cases, allegedly including one involving the mafia. FBI Director Kash Patel is out with this. He says the schemes involved tens of millions of dollars. The New York Times says one indictment detailed bets involving inside information that will raise questions about the integrity of NBA games and would implicate other players. CBS Sports, Portland Trail Blazers coach Chauncey Billups, Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, and former NBA player Damon Jones were 3 of more than 30 people arrested by the FBI Thursday morning. They say Billups and Jones are charged for allegedly taking part in illegal high-stakes poker games. The NBA says, quote, Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups are being placed on immediate leave from their teams, and we will continue to cooperate with the relevant authorities. We take these allegations with the utmost seriousness, and the integrity of our game remains our top priority. 4 family members of a candidate for governor in Illinois were killed in a helicopter crash. The New York Times is reporting that Republican candidate Darren Bailey and his campaign said early Thursday his son Zachary and his daughter-in-law Kelsey had been killed in a helicopter accident in Montana, along with 2 of their children. Another grandson of his was apparently not inside of the helicopter, and details of this crash are not immediately available, according to the Times. The government shutdown is into its 3rd week. We are almost near a month since Democrats and Republicans have not come to terms, have not ended the stalemate. Democrats continue to vouch for an extension of Obamacare subsidies. They have now inserted the health care argument into the conversation. Republicans have said, yes, let's talk about this. We do think that health care is an issue, and we have constituents that we're worried about as well. However, the shutdown prolongs. There's concern among those who receive government benefits, including SNAP, food stamps, and WIC. That's a benefits program for women, infants, and children. And the money's apparently run dry. If the government comes back open, Republicans and Democrats could more quickly fund those programs. The Trump administration has apparently provided $300 million to keep this program running, at least for the short term. But there are still some concerns about these programs being disrupted and money getting to people who need it. TikTok on this issue, these benefits were supposed to be coming in the start of November, and it looks like they could be delayed. Demo at the White House. You might have seen photos and videos out of the East Wing of the White House being demolished right now, and that's to make way for President Trump's ballroom that he wants to add. The East Wing was primarily used for the First Lady, her staff. It was also a welcome mat, if you will, for visitors throughout many years of the White House, and an entranceway for many events, Christmas parties, you name it. But who okayed the East Wing to be demolished? Typically, any large-scale renovation construction at the White House has to go through a regulatory approval process. The government is shut down right now, leading plenty of folks to wonder who okayed this. Now, the ballroom is going to be privately funded. Taxpayer money is not going to be used, apparently, to build it. And President Trump previously said that the existing structure of the White House would not be interfered with. He said he revered it. He said he loved the building. However, it's coming down. And he admitted what's there has to be erased. There are plenty of questions surrounding historic preservation here. All throughout the week, we were scratching our heads wondering if President Trump and Vladimir Putin over in Russia would meet yet again after that summit in Alaska that did not provide fruitful results to put an end to the war in Ukraine after back and forth that started with President Zelensky from Ukraine visiting Washington. President Trump called it off, saying he doesn't see any reason to sit down with Putin. His argument is that every time he talks with him, Putin then fires more attacks into Ukraine. We just saw this week that a kindergarten in Ukraine was hit. There were images of children being carried out by family members. It was quite sad. Ukrainian President Zelensky also is looking for brand new military equipment, missiles, in order to hit Russia. He wants to go harder. The United States is reportedly going to be cracking down on Russia here in order to try and tip the scales and get this war ended. And that's by imposing some brand new sanctions. Key nugget that came out in reporting this week was that President Trump apparently said to Zelensky while they were talking at the White House that he should consider giving up territory that they've already lost to Russia, despite President Trump just a couple of weeks ago going on his platform Truth Social, and there was a post saying that he thought that Ukraine could not only win the war, but get back any territory that they had already lost. The United States continues to blow up boats, largely in the Caribbean, off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia. We've seen videos posted by the Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense, whatever you would like to call it these days, Pete Hegseth put out, and he says that these were illegal drug smugglers. There's a lot of pushback here, especially from people in the legal world, including some Republicans, I'll get to that in a moment, who say that, and question, rather, why are we blowing up boats without sharing evidence, going through due process within a court of law, charging people with a crime? Republican Senator Rand Paul criticized this with that same argument in question, saying that he doesn't think we should be doing this. Colombia's president came out and said that one of the people who were on those boats, several people have been killed here, was a fisherman. And in one of those incidents, 2 people actually survived and were reportedly held by the U.S. military for some time, but then they were released back to their home countries. They're repatriated. But the question arose after the fact, if the United States thought that these people were illegally smuggling drugs, why would they not be held to account, instead being repatriated back to their countries? Those No Kings protests, as they were called, popped up over last weekend. Reportedly 7 million people turned out from all factions of the country, from Oregon to Florida to Southern California, up to Maine, and in the heartland as well. People are protesting President Donald Trump's administration. He claims he's not a king. He said on Air Force One, "I'm no king, I'm no king." Despite some Republicans, including GOP House Speaker Mike Johnson earlier this week, saying that these No Kings protesters were anti-American, they were largely nonviolent. And after those protests, you might have seen this, President Trump posted a video. It was AI generated. He was in a fighter jet and he had a crown on, took to the skies and dropped what looked like poop on protesters. That was met with scrutiny. The president and his allies certainly responded in jest, saying that it was a joke. There was also apparently a Democrat congressman who posted a video that showed a piece of poop on top of Mike Johnson's head after the fact, saying it was satire. Has the ceasefire in the Middle East been scrapped? Israel claims that Hamas fired on Israeli soldiers, killing 2 members of the Israeli Defense Force, and all aid into Gaza would stop. Don't forget, this came after that monumental deal to pause the fighting, return the hostages home to their families in Israel. President Trump had a victory lap for this. Hamas claims that Israel violated the ceasefire, but Israel did retaliate. They struck back, reportedly killed over 24 Palestinians. There's a tragic crash. It was a hit and run at a birthday party in Maryland this week. A woman was killed. 13 other people were hurt. 8 of them were kids. Police say they were from 1 to 17 years old. A 66-year-old man from Washington, D.C., not far from where the crash happened in Prince George's County, turned himself in. And investigators are still trying to figure out exactly what happened. They say that they're looking into whether alcohol and speed was involved. President Trump says the Department of Justice owes him $230 million. That was initially the report from the Washington Post. President Trump was asked about this in the White House. He signaled that he does feel that he deserves possibly being compensated as a result of federal investigations into him, previous ones. The president then said, though, he would donate any payout that he gets from a settlement to charity. It was certainly scrutinized by Democrats and also political analysts, pundits, legal commentators. How could a sitting president pressure his own Department of Justice to pay him restitution? And apparently, according to several reports, those that would make the final decision on any type of settlement are lawyers that were previously personally connected to President Trump before his second term. The U.S. Marines were honored in California for their 250th birthday, their anniversary. We saw the Army had their 250th celebration. It happened to fall on President Trump's birthday this past June on Flag Day, June 14th. But back to the celebration for the Marines in California. There was some controversy because we learned that artillery might be fired over a major interstate there. It's called I-5. It was shut down at the time for this demonstration. Vice President J.D. Vance was there. Now, despite the interstate being shut down, apparently one of the shells that were fired as a demonstration prematurely exploded, and some of the shrapnel, at least one piece of the shrapnel, hit a California Highway Patrol cruiser. Good news, nobody was hurt. Certainly for folks who use that corridor were concerned. This all happened at a base called Camp Pendleton. President Trump, again, continues to vouch for why he's sending in members of the National Guard into areas of the country, largely Democrat cities, the latest Portland, Oregon. A judge initially said, nope, you can't do that. You cannot send the Guard into Portland, Oregon. However, this week an appeals court came out and greenlit this. However, that appeals court and the judges who sit in that courtroom claimed that they did not think that what was happening in Portland was a war zone. Now, the president continues to claim that there is rampant violence going on in Portland, Oregon, and Democrats in Portland say that it's unnecessary to have the Guard there. Portland was the site of protests and riots during the George Floyd protests and the large-scale Black Lives Matter movement that happened in 2020. At the time, President Trump was furious, and Republicans used Portland as a talking point for saying that Black Lives Matter protesters were rampantly violent. Not far from President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, there was a apparent hunting stand found near Palm Beach Airport where the president takes off and lands in Air Force One. The FBI and Secret Service sharing more details about this story in many reports. They had claimed that the hunting stand was within the line of sight of Air Force One. We don't yet know who was apparently connected to it. Election Day is November 4th. We're less than 2 weeks away from us electing a brand new governor in Virginia, and it would be the very first female governor of Virginia. Early voting has taken place. There's a project in Virginia that tracks votes. Apparently, early votes are nearly double what they were 4 years ago during the last governor's election. New York City is going to be electing a mayor. Will it be former governor Andrew Cuomo? Zohran Mamdani, he's that self-described Democratic Socialist and member of the New York State General Assembly. He beat Cuomo in the primary. Cuomo continued his campaign. They continue to debate. Also, Republican Curtis Sliwa remains in the race. That's going to wrap it up for Byline with Ben Dennis. 1 week of news in one episode. Hopefully, you follow me on my socials. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I have a link to where you can find me in the description of wherever you're getting this podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube. And I really hope you have a great weekend. It's been a long one. Take a load off. Enjoy your time with some family and friends. We will see you next Friday. Take it easy.